It was a morning like no other. The sun crept over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the tranquil waters of Manila Bay. For a brief moment the world seemed peaceful, untouched by the chaos brewing just beyond sight. But then, the horizon boiled with gray clouds, swirling and thickening, as if nature itself sensed the coming storm. The air grew heavy, charged with anticipation and dread. Lightning flashed over angry waters, illuminating the restless sea. Thunder rolled, echoing like distant drums of war, as waves crashed against each other in a wild, relentless dance. Then, out of the mist, sails, a forest of masts, appeared off Manila Bay. Dozens of tall ships, their outlines ghostly in the dawn, crept closer with every passing minute. British warships, flags snapping in the wind, advanced like predators stalking their prey. Their hulls cut through the waves with purpose, each vessel bristling with power and intent. The sea roared with their approach, cannons loaded and crews at the ready. The fleet moved as one, a wall of wood and iron, unstoppable and determined. The city had no idea what was coming. The year was 1762. The world was at war, and Manila, the crown jewel of Spain's Asian empire, was about to become a battlefield. Spanish officials in Manila, the jewel of Spain's Asian empire, heard distant booms. Was it thunder? No, it was the drumbeat of invasion. Their faces paled as realization dawned. Danger was at their doorstep. Merchants, priests, and townsfolk rushed to the walls. Fear spread in moments. Manila had never seen enemy ships so close. Mothers clutched their children and traders abandoned their stalls, all eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. Inside those ships, British soldiers prepared for action. Muskets were checked, powder was dry, just barely after the wild storm. The men's faces were tense, their nerves steeled for the battle ahead. Admiral Samuel Cornish and General William Draper stood ready. Their mission, take Manila at all costs. The world's eyes were on this far-off city. Every decision they made would echo across continents and history. In minutes, the old rules were swept away. Manila's defenders scrambled, calling men to arms. Bells rang out, summoning soldiers and citizens alike, but British cannons were already aimed at the city's stone walls, ready to unleash destruction. The first shots of a forgotten drama rang out, echoing over the bay. Smoke billowed and the sound of cannon fire shattered the morning calm. The siege of Manila had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. News spread like wildfire. The British are here. Panic gripped the city. Churches rang alarm bells. Soldiers rushed to their posts. The Union Jack was now visible from every rooftop. For centuries, Manila had seemed untouchable. Now, it was under siege. Within days, British guns hammered the city's ancient defenses. Cannonballs smashed towers and carved holes through the walls. Fires broke out. Civilians cowered in cellars. Each night, the sky glowed red with flames and terror. The smell of gunpowder and fear was everywhere. Inside the British camp, orders were shouted over the chaos. Redcoats surged forward, bayonets fixed. Spanish Governor General Simon de Anda tried to hold the line, but morale was breaking. The city's fate hung by a thread. Then, the unthinkable happened. The gates fell. The British stormed in, streets echoing with boots and gunfire. Manila, the crown of Spain's empire in Asia, had fallen, almost overnight. But why Manila? Why did the British set their sights on this distant city, thousands of miles from London at the edge of Asia? To answer that, let's zoom out and look at the world stage of the 1700s. This was the era of the 7 Years' War, a conflict so vast, it set the globe ablaze and drew in nearly every major power of the time. Europe, the Americas, Africa, and Asia all became battlefields as empires clashed for dominance, territory, and wealth. Old rivals Spain and Britain were locked in a struggle for power, riches, and survival, each seeking to outmaneuver the other on every front. Britain devised a bold plan: strike Spain where it would hurt the most, far from Europe's gaze. Spanish Manila was more than just a city. It was the gateway to the riches of Asian trade, a hub for silver, silk, and spices flowing between continents. If Britain could seize Manila, they would cripple Spanish influence in Asia and disrupt a vital artery of global commerce. They would also capture the legendary Manila Galleon, the ship that carried unimaginable wealth between Asia and Mexico, fueling the Spanish Empire. The British East India Company, always hungry for profit and power, saw a golden opportunity to expand its reach and fill its coffers. So, they dispatched a fleet from India, loaded with soldiers, supplies, and ambition, determined to make their mark on history. Manila was thousands of miles from London, but in the fires of war, distance shrank, and the world became a chessboard for empires. For the people of Manila, the reasons behind the invasion hardly mattered. Their lives were about to be upended by forces far beyond their control. Suddenly, their city was transformed into a pawn in a global chess game, its fate decided by distant kings and generals. Great powers moved their pieces, strategizing and scheming for advantage, while ordinary people braced for the coming storm. The fate of the Philippines now hung in the balance, as the winds of war swept ever closer to Manila's shores. After the walls fell, chaos reigned, British flags flew over the battered city, and soldiers marched through the streets, muskets gleaming. Looters ran wild, the old Spanish government was swept away, and locals watched nervously. Who now ruled Manila? General Draper set up British rule fast. He demanded ransoms from the city's richest. Churches and homes were searched for treasures, and taxes were raised. British officers tried to keep order, but discipline broke down among the troops. Tension simmered everywhere. Some residents hoped the British would bring new freedoms or trade, while others, honestly, feared the worst. Rumors of violence and betrayal spread. Every day people asked, would the British stay forever? But outside Manila's walls, the story was different. News of the city's fall sparked outrage. Not everyone was ready to accept a new master. Beyond the city, the countryside was alive with resistance. Spanish loyalists fled into the hills. Filipino leaders, some allied with Spain, others with dreams of freedom, gathered forces. Guerrilla fighters melted into jungles and mountains, striking at British patrols. Simon de Anda, the ousted Spanish governor, set up a rival government in Bacolor, Pampanga, and he declared himself the legitimate ruler. Loyalist troops and Filipino volunteers rallied to his side. Messages were sent in secret. Supplies and weapons were gathered at night. The British tried to strike back. They sent columns to hunt the rebels, but the countryside was unforgiving. Roads turned to mud. Bridges vanished in floods. The British were foreigners in a land that did not want them. In village after village, resistance grew. Priests, women, even children took part. The war was no longer about empires, it was about survival, pride, and hope. For months the British held Manila, but little else. They tried to win allies, offering rewards to Filipino leaders who would switch sides. Some local chiefs agreed, hoping for power or protection. Others played a dangerous double game, pretending to cooperate while feeding the resistance. Fighting erupted across Luzon. British patrols clashed with ambushes. Villages were burned, then rebuilt. The British tried to push south and north, but their numbers were just too small. Disease thinned their ranks, and supplies ran short. Rumors swirled. Would more British troops arrive? Would Spain send a rescue fleet? Every day the answer changed. For a moment, it seemed Britain might hold on. Some even dreamed of a new British colony in Asia. But every night, gunshots echoed from the darkness. The British were never safe, never truly in control. The fate of the Philippines hung in suspense. Then, from the west, came unexpected news. In the grand halls of Paris, far from the battle-scarred streets of Manila, diplomats gathered to end a global conflict. A treaty, signed with careful strokes of a quill, brought the 7 Years' War to a close, sending ripples across continents. The British Parliament, after years of costly war, had finally agreed to peace. The terms were clear and uncompromising. Manila, recently seized at great cost, must be returned to Spain. The fate of a distant city was decided in a room thousands of miles away. Shock and disbelief rippled through the British ranks stationed in Manila. Soldiers and officers alike had risked everything, enduring hardship and uncertainty. Now, by the decree of distant politicians, they were ordered to abandon their hard-won prize and prepare for departure. General Draper, the British commander, solemnly handed the city keys back to the Spanish authorities. The Union Jack, which had flown briefly over Manila, was lowered in the city square, marking the end of British rule. Manila's battered gates creaked open once more to Spanish rule. Spanish officials marched in, reclaiming their city as British troops filed out. For the locals, it was a moment of relief, uncertainty, and reflection as they watched the invaders depart. The people of Manila would never forget the chaos, the fear, and the brief, unsettling taste of a different future. The scars of war lingered in the ruined streets and in the memories of those who survived. Across Southeast Asia, rulers and empires took careful note. The episode proved that even the mightiest European powers were not invincible, and that the fate of nations could shift with the stroke of a pen. Though this dramatic episode soon faded from world headlines, its impact lingered in the region's collective memory. The world moved on, but Manila's brief occupation became a cautionary tale. The events had shown that the Philippines was not just a remote outpost, but a coveted prize in the great global struggles of empire. Its strategic importance was now undeniable to all. The city that almost changed hands would someday rise again, shaped by invaders, rebels, and the unpredictable tides of history. Manila's legacy, forged in conflict and resilience, would echo through the centuries, reminding future generations of the city's enduring spirit and the lessons of its forgotten past.